So my name's Hannah Thompson, as Mal said. I'm a Regulatory Affairs Advisor at Seafish. I'm a relatively new addition to the team. I joined in 2016 from a background really in environmental management. I spent some time working in the plastics recycling industry, environmental consultancy and local authority. So my background might sound a little bit diverse to seafood regulation, but actually I feel like it's given me a bit of an understanding really of how red tape can impact business and the wider industry. A bit like what Steve was saying, I think we've all probably come from industry at some point. So since joining Seafish, I've been advising on seafood traceability, nomenclature, labelling and integrity, and most recently I've taken on the task of developing our export regulation work. So today I'm going to tell you a bit about the working group on exports of food and drink, which has really been a pioneering component to the development of our export regulation work. So in this session, I'll discuss the drivers for developing Seafish's export regulation work and what the regulation team plans to do to assist seafood exporters in future. I'll look at exactly what the working group is, the purpose of its work, and how Seafish's involvement should benefit our exporting stakeholders. I would like to discuss the membership of the group with you, and we'll talk through some of the working group's key outputs, as well as an idea of what the group might be working on in future. Can I ask if there are any questions, if you could just jot them down? I think Ivan and I and Mal are doing a Q&A after Ivan's presentation. So since the vote to leave the EU on the 23rd of June 2016, the regulation team have observed an increase in exports-related inquiries. Given the likely further impact of EU exit and given the role of the regulation team to facilitate and to assist proportionate regulation, we soon recognised the need to enhance our export regulation work, which is quite interesting given Steve's presentation earlier where he said the number one concern for exporters was market insight, so that was quite relevant. So with Seafish's new corporate plan, the 2018-2021 corporate plan, being launched in April, it gave us the opportunity really to develop this export regulation work area. And as a result, a work stream was dedicated to export regulation under Challenge 1, Changing Landscape. So in this work area, we hope to assist stakeholders by signposting export businesses to information on the food laws of the importing country and to ensure that their products are compliant in the destination market. So, for example, we intend to produce just some short guides on the requirements to export to certain countries. So we'll work quite closely with Mal and the guides that he's looking to produce, but really ours will be the step before you go to ERMIS, before you go to Mal's guides. It's really just a brief overview. So we would look to have a bit of a summary on documentation required in the exporting destination, the approvals required, as well as any applicable trade agreements and tariffs as well. We also plan to act as a liaison between government and the seafood sector on trade-related issues through our participation in cross-government forums, discussing mainly regulatory requirements and the transition issues that will affect the seafood industry. One such forum was immediately recognised to be of relevance and importance to achieving the aims of the work stream, and that was the FSA's working group on the exports of food and drink. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to summarise it to the exports working group. So Seafish became a member of that in early 2018. So what is the exports working group? If you're a business who exports seafood to non-EU countries, you'll already be aware of the need to provide export health certification for your consignments. For seafood, this certification is largely provided by your local authority. However, there are some exemptions for exporting fisheries products to countries like Taiwan, China, and New Zealand, for example, where a specific certificate from the Animal Plant and Health Agency is required. The Exports Working Group focuses on matters related to local authority export health certification process, and that's for both products of animal origin and products not of animal origin. But it also discusses other matters of relevance to facilitating export certification for food and drink. The group is a collaboration between the FSA, local authorities, other government departments and stakeholder groups, all with an interest in export certification as issued by local authorities. Collaboration really is the key word here. It's a concept which, when I was talking about this presentation with the Food Standards Agency, they were really keen to convey that collaboration is really a cornerstone to this group. The FSA actually chair and secretary at the group as well. The group was established in 2017, so as a result it's only held 4 meetings, but it currently meets every 3 months and last met at the end of July. So as you can see, the aim of the Exports Working Group is to establish an active partnership between representatives of all stakeholders involved in the process of providing local authority certification services to food business operators wishing to export food and drink products to non-EU countries. So in order to achieve this overarching aim, the Exports Working Group plans to contribute to the design of an effective communication strategy, ensuring that food businesses are aware of their responsibilities and obligations in the export certification process and how best to obtain support to facilitate their exports. The group plans to contribute to the drafting of central guidance on local authority responsibilities on non-EU exports and establishing a process to ensure that such guidance is regularly reviewed. The group will identify and consider how best to share good practice and expertise in relation to export certification. It will consider how best to streamline the certification process with a consistent framework across all local authorities. It will review the interaction between local authorities and the official vets certifying products of animal origin, which the official vets often are certifying products within a premises that the local authority works with. And to make proposals on how cooperation and communication can be improved to facilitate effective export health certification. So given all of this, I'm sure you can see why we felt Seafish's involvement in this group would be of benefit to our export regulation work and to our exporting stakeholders. Membership of the Exports Working Group has given us another avenue to facilitate the exports of seafood and to ensure seafood exports receive their fair consideration amongst the other food export groups. So we've already established that the group is a collaboration of the FSA, local authorities, other government departments and stakeholders, but which organisations in particular comprise the group's core membership? Hillingdon Council, North East Lincolnshire County Council. Neil is here today, who is also our representative for North East Lincolnshire Council on the group. Monmouthshire County Council, the Borough of Poole, Norwich City Council and Cheshire County Council. They were all selected to represent the English and Welsh local authorities. And how they were selected is that the FSA sent out a request for an expression of interest to all local authorities. And if they had an interest in this group, they would submit an application. They sent that to the FSA. The FSA then looked at that and picked the best mix that they could find that sufficiently represented the different sizes and types of local authorities, as well as a good regional coverage as well. The Food Standards Agency has primary responsibility for the food safety and standards aspects of exports in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And as a result, the exports policy team in the FSA have an obvious interest, especially given their position as chair and secretary to the group. The FSA teams in Wales and Northern Ireland provide a more regionalised expertise, and the Regulating Our Future and relationship management teams, although they perhaps have a slightly more abstract interest, but their role really is to support local authorities. Food Standards Scotland is the focal point in Scotland between local authorities, the Animal Plant and Health Agency, DEFRA, and the Scottish Government, and really has a role to play in coordinating export certification. The Society of Chief Officers of Environmental Health Scotland Export Certification Working Group, which I'm going to shorten to COSLA, represents the Scottish local authorities in this working group. And the Northern Ireland Imported Exported Food Subgroup represents the Northern Ireland local authorities. Representatives from the National Food Hygiene Focus Group, and the National Food Standards and Labelling Focus Group also participate in the working group to share expertise and best practice in those specific fields. Other government departments and UK professional bodies have recently been welcomed into the group's membership, and this is really where Seafish lies, as well as the professional bodies for environmental health officers, so the Chartered Institute for Environmental Health and the Royal Environmental Health Institute for Scotland, REHIS. So as I mentioned previously, the group has only really recently been established. In fact, its first meeting was probably around this time last year. However, on the 26th of September this year, the group finalised the content of the new guidance for local authorities and non-EU country export certification. This guidance is intended to replace the outdated LACORS export guidance for local authorities, which was actually issued all the way back in 2003. It draws heavily on the food export health certification guidance for Scottish local authorities, which had been produced by working group members COSLA. The document was a priority work area for the group because there was an urgent need to fill the notable vacuum in guidance for local authorities. And with the guide now published, it's the intention that it will be a living document so that any changes or gaps in the guidance can be implemented quickly and efficiently. Seafish were involved in the drafting of the guide. In particular, we identified some misconceptions about the export health certification of seafood. Broadly, the guide seemed to treat seafood export processes and regulations the same as meat export processes and regulations, which most of you will probably know isn't the case. So we sought greater distinction between the two in the guide. We also felt that some elements relevant to seafood exports were missing, so we provided item 2.7 of the guide on the roles and responsibilities of the Fish Health Inspector at Seafish. We provided clarity in other areas as well, where the export process for seafood products benefited from greater distinction. So given the urgency of the guide, a large proportion of the group's effort thus far has really been channeled into getting this guide out. But I think a key output as a result of this collaboration, this active partnership so far, has been the assurance that local authorities around the UK have been provided with the best guidance and information available to them so that they can provide an effective export certification service to industry, and that is within their existing resources. So, for instance, the working group has been kept up to date with progress on the export elements of the UK's replacement to the Traces system and the UK's communication with third countries about EU-UK legislative change within the context of export certification. So not only has the group really been receiving updates, they've also had the opportunity to comment on other areas, other projects. So the Animal, Plant and Health Agency's Assured Certification of Exports project, which we'll abbreviate to the ACE project, under which AFA is developing a new qualification. It's for the training and authorisation of non-vets for sanitary certification or attestation in support of veterinary certification. The Exports Working Group has also provided comment on the proposed changes to health and ID marking once we've left the EU. So what's in the pipeline for the Exports Working Group? Well, besides the need to maintain the new living guidance document for local authorities, there's also the potential that further guidance documents will be needed, and they will be really to assist the local authorities that are involved in the export certification, especially in light of any changes that may result from EU exit. Given the likely impact of the ACE project on local authorities, the group will continue to input into the project's development and will work to further streamline the export certification process. In particular, one area of future work, which there might be, is the provision of a centralised list of establishments which are approved to export products of animal origin to non-EU countries. There's just preliminary discussions at the moment, but that could be one area of work that the group gets into. So equipping local authorities in this way with the foresight on future impacts on their resources and equipping them to share best practice and knowledge supports an effective export health certification system, which ultimately can save time in exportation of goods, reduce risk and cost for exporting businesses. The next meeting of the Exports Working Group is the 23rd of November, and we usually summarise the key discussions of our meetings in our monthly regulation newsletter, which you can sign up to on the Seafish website. So that's about it, really. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. If you do have any questions regarding the export health certification process or regarding the group, we've obviously got the Q&A after Ivan's presentation, but I'm about for the rest of the evening and tomorrow as well. So yeah, I think that's everything.